Howdy. Got 2 minutes. Anybody else excited for the fact that Repentance drops? Great start. Yeah. 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 I was saving that run just for the start of class, too. Fuck. I forgot that I had charge shots. Yeah. Got some cash. Start a series of runs like that. That'll do. Oh, wait. What am I doing? We can full screen this now. It's so big. Oh, you... Not worth it. It is pretty much time for class. Did you... Let's see, we have anybody here yet? We have me and Streamlabs. This might be a fun class. A59. Okay. So, if you are in class here, I'm not getting an accurate count from the software. Hopefully you went ahead and installed Blender prior to class, because it will be very helpful. going to end badly, isn't it? Oh, there we go. Dang. Let's do this. All right. End this room, and we'll talk class stuff, because we have some fun stuff to do today. It's wondrous. 4 o'clock. All right, let's get going. Enough Isaac. Enough bombs. So, what we are going to be doing today is going over Blender. And I'm curious, do we have people in chat? Oh, we have a new user. You don't. You're not in this class. But I said you could join, so it's okay. All right, 7 users. Yes, I is here. That's good to see, because when I look at the list of users on Streamlabs over here, I see a bot, I see myself, and I see one other person. So good that you're here. Today's going to be all about Blender. Whoa, look at that. Follows. Woohoo. Well, that deserves a, I think this is going to work. It's been a while since I've used this command. Hey. Woo. Today's going to be all about Blender, and it's going to be hopefully fun and not too bad for all of you, because I am not great at Blender. I can use it. Um, it's just the amount of times that I use Blender are kind of few and far between, honestly. Fix a camera here. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to start talking, and much like when I try playing games before class, I'm going to stop paying attention to what I'm doing and accidentally screw up and not know how to fix it and just delete it and start over. Um, with Blender, just to kind of caveat this, there are a ton of hotkeys. There are a lot of little things which make your life a lot easier in Blender. Um, and me not using it on a daily basis means that I don't have that muscle memory. But that shouldn't stop you from, picking up and working with Blender. Dad pun of the day. So that's what we're working with working with today. So curious, how many of you that are currently watching, have you ever played with Blender before? So we're in the middle part where we move away from WebGL. We're talking about other libraries, and that's the homework you're working on right now, right? And then Blender and then Unity is how we're going to be going. 3ds Max. So I think you're actually a layer above Blender. Yeah. Blender so it's a very interesting thing. So I've got some links here, so definitely recommend. I guess let me start with this. If you want to do any kind of 3D modeling, Blender is absolutely wonderful. It is open source, meaning it is free. It is constantly updated. Constantly is, it's not like every week, but there are continuing updates to it. And it has gotten a lot better than it used to be. So in the past, it was very, very, very bad to work with if you're coming at it from just a normal user's perspective. Like it was almost like working with Emacs at one point. It was very, very rough around the edges, but it was still powerful. When I was an undergrad in the 2000s, I wanted to work with Blender. I thought it was really cool. I printed out the entire Blender. They had like a wiki book kind of thing. It was like an open source textbook. I still have the binder somewhere with it, and it's probably would be fun to look at. But God, was that interface awful. It is much better now. It is very approachable, and the amount of people that are on YouTube making tutorials for Blender is insane. There are lots of really good tutorials out there. So if what you see today is something that interests you, I would really recommend going a little bit deeper into it because if you once you kind of get it, I suppose it's super powerful. I've got a playlist here for you of some of the tutorial basics. This is out of the Blender Foundation. So if you want like all kinds of things, like if you want to do procedural textures, which sounds like something that would be up my alley, or if you just want to learn like about creating meshes or beveling things. So if you have no idea what any of these topics are here, think of it like just a 3D modeling tool, except it's open source. So this is like your SolidWorks or 3ds Max or Maya, things of that nature. You can do lots of really powerful stuff with it. I'm going to leave it kind of unmaximized because I'm going to be coming back and forth to this interface. What you can also use it for is actually, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Drafting and CAD type stuff. If you want to build up a 3D model and send it to like a 3D printer, you can actually do that in Blender too. You have the ability to specify exact values and exact measurements. So like if you're building up, a box, or if you're building up some kind of a thing that you want to print or you want to machine out or something, you can generate these models in Blender. You can also use like SketchUp, which is also popular too, right? For that, but Blender is kind of a one-stop shop. People have used them for animations, they've used them for movies, for like adding CGI to scenes. Um, Again, 3D modeling for architectural CAD type stuff. So it's honestly super powerful. And I've got some screenshots here of some of the things that have been done. Now, the screenshots I've got are about a year out of date, so take that for what it's worth. There has been more added into Blender since then. People have gotten even more proficient with it. But, kind of as a starting point, here are some of the things that you could build with Blender if you want to. Like you see here, this is really what? It's just a sphere with some, maybe this is an extra shape that's been layered on it, that's been cut out. And we have textures that have been applied, right? You see some rust here. You see this kind of blue metallic sheen. This is all stuff that we can render in Blender. And here we have Bender, because that's another fun pun with Blender. And again, the interface is very, very clunky, a bit difficult to get into, but it is, honestly, it's way better now. And if you were to just go ahead and download Blender, I've got where's the version at? Oh, right here, 2.83.4. This is probably, if I think I grabbed this 4 or 5 months ago. So this is the one that I am using. I'm going to create a new file. But, oh, one other thing I wanted to show you too. So I like to show off some things that I'm working with for graphics and other classes. And I showed you a little platformer the other day, and I wanted to kind of play around with something different. So I got a little demo going in P5. And this is your time where you can groan. Oh God, he's doing something else in P5. Made a little procedurally generated map with roguelike graphics. And what excited me about this and why I kind of wanted to share it with you all is I finally figured out how to do chunking, which to me is an accomplishment since I've been trying to figure it out for years. Well, not figure it out, it's not a hard concept, but one of the limitations that I kind of have fun playing with when I do graphical type stuff and I end up with little tech demos like this, I like trying to generate massive environments and do it within tiny constraints. So if you've played with P5.js, you know that it sucks at pretty much anything. It's intended to be easy to use and to get up and running. Well, here I have 100 worlds kind of stacked on top of each other. And I can just kind of navigate through all of them, and it is extremely performant, which I find fun. And I got this done through chunking. Anybody know what chunking is? This is a good thing to know if you're intending to take graphics to the gaming world. I've got a little unhappy person there following me. Side topic from Blender, I suppose. I just wanted to show this off because I'm proud of it. Like Minecraft chunks. Yeah, pretty much. So with graphics, and this is a topic that we talked about before, you only draw what you need to draw. So in Minecraft, that's your visible region, right? So things start popping in from the distance as you can handle them in memory. That's basically what I did here. I'm only drawing what I need to show you. And saying it sounds really stupid easy, right? But what I've got here are basically a whole bunch of 2D arrays, and I added on a third dimension for just the chunk. And the chunk is just this little slice of the world that I've generated. And I don't have them like nicely following each other. Like this is, I should mention this is simplex noise too, if you're familiar with noise generation algorithms at all. But it gives you nice, smooth contours. Stuff like this makes me happy to see. But yeah, chunking is a performance measure, absolutely. Definitely a good thing to kind of consider if you are making a big game type of a world. Um, if I were to render out this map that I have in memory in P5, you would not, like, I tried it just as a demo. I couldn't even touch the arrow key. It would just freeze. But doing it this way, holding stuff in memory and not actually drawing it, hey, that actually works pretty well. I'm fairly surprised. And that's a 800 by 600 world there too. So it's not super tiny. But let's talk about Blender. I guess if anybody's interested in that kind of stuff, we can chat offline about it. But what do we have in a default scene in Blender? So we know this is a 3D modeling tool here, right? So we have our scene. We have a whole bunch of stuff which I'm going to talk about on the slides to kind of point out. But, you know, you get your lonely little default cube that everybody likes to make fun of when they're learning Blender. This is one of those things where I don't know the hotkey to go back to the default position. As 0 is to go to camera view. But there you have your 3D cube. We have our camera. We have our light source. So in Blender, it might be kind of, I think you can probably see it okay in the stream. This guy here is the camera. If I click this little camera here, this is what the camera can see. I unclick it, I go back to my general scene view. This thing here is a light source, so this is a point light. The light just kind of emanates off from it. We can specify its parameters and change things as well, but this is what you get as a default scene. If I were to say, you know, let's kind of spin around to look at the top view, and what I'm doing is one thing I would recommend, by the way, have a mouse. Blender sucks without a mouse. Probably the same for any other 3D tool as well, but I cannot navigate the scene on a touchpad to save my life. You need all the buttons. But let's say that I make my scene kind of look like this. All right, if I go over here to render this and go render image, it's going to show me what the camera sees, right? So something to keep in mind, that WebGL camera that we talked about, the exact same ideas apply here. Now let's say that I'm going to take my camera, so I just clicked it, and you can click, you know, you can drag to select, I can select multiple things, but I'm going to click this camera, and I'm going to move it. Now when we start, and what I did here is I grabbed the hand and started shifting it around. If I want to move it, so I can move it along the various axes or kind of freehand it, I'm going to move it this way. Let's move it up a little bit. Let's kind of rotate it. Oops, I want to rotate it. And I can actually look at the camera view, and this is what I would see now. All right, I kind of shifted it around. Let's move it down a little bit back. So let's back it off. So I can kind of see what's going on here. Now if I check it out, oops, I'm gonna go back even farther. Way back. And this is kind of the type of lecture where if you want to play around with it too, that's probably not a terrible idea as we go. But now my perspective is a little bit different, right? I probably should have pulled it like way back. But kind of the point is that this camera is what you see, and it's an object in your scene collection. So these are some of our basic objects here. Kind of key things if you want to render something, you need a camera, you need a light. Otherwise, you know, if we take the light away, let's get rid of this light. I think if I just do that, it goes away. Let's render this again. Oops. I want to get rid of the light. Delete. Render again. We can't really see anything. Right? There's nothing to illuminate the surface. If I put the light back in and I unhide it, render, now we have light. Based on where you put the light, based on what textures you apply to images, you will get a different scene. And depending on how complicated things are, rendering can take a while. Even if you have a RTX card, even if you have a server farm, this is getting into actual like 3D modeling type stuff. So basic scene, and there's a lot to unpack with this interface here. I'm going to kind of go through it as we go through the slides, but this scene collection on the right is a list of, oh, you can't really see it because I'm in the way. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I'm going to have to, I might have to hide myself anyway. Let's see. Camera, and that, and let's move me down here. Perfect. So here's our scene collection. This is a list of all the objects you've instantiated. If you add in a torus, if you add in a monkey head, if you add in a plane, oops, that's a cube. If you add in a plane, so all these things are kind of just overlaid on top of each other, right? But there's my plane, here's my torus. I didn't add the monkey head because I misclicked it apparently. Here's my monkey head. All right, I've got all my type of scene stuff here. But I can find them all in this area and I can kind of go through and select them all. I can hide them, show them, select their vertices, play with those. This is where I start not really remembering how the camera works in here. But basically that's that. And now let me move myself back here because this isn't important anymore. This type of environment here, these are all kind of like modifiers that you can apply to your various shapes. We'll get into this. We're not going to get into all of them, but things like textures and special effects and materials and all that are going to show up here. The stuff on the left that you see is all going to change over time, depending on which mode you are in. So if we're in edit mode, like we can start pulling things apart, we can move things around, we can extrude things, so we can bring like, there's a monkey head kind of zoomed in, zoomed out. Well, I deselected that, but okay. I need to reselect you now because I've got extra vertices. No, that's fun. This is like the engineer with his neck extending, right, from TF2. It's kind of nightmare fuel. Let's undo that. But basically these will all change. So we're in edit mode here. If we go to object mode, which means we're not playing with vertices, we're just playing with the object as a whole, we can move it, right? We can move Suzanne around. We can rotate her. Scale. Whoa. Things of that nature, basically. And one of the nifty things about Blender too is that if you click and hold something and you kind of go off screen, your mouse will automatically come down to the bottom. So I'm just kind of moving up and down. It's kind of a nifty little thing, which I actually appreciate in Blender. It's not always the case you see that. So these things here on the right are our properties. If I were to go to Suzanne here, and where are your properties at? Here we go. Nope, that's not it. It's this one. Okay, I was close. There we go. Object properties. So I can move by very specific measurements too if I wanted. So if I wanted her to be at a 24-degree angle over the x-axis, there we go. If I want to scale by 10 in the x-axis, right, you can be very, very specific, which is handy. But again, these are all just tiny little icons where it's kind of hard to parse out exactly what everything is until you start playing with it again, like on a daily basis. So there, that's your tools. This is your outliner or your scene collection. We have workspaces too, which is going to be very powerful for you. Also, these tabs up here are the different workspaces. And if you've ever played with anything like Photoshop or any kind of those big GUI tools that encompass a particular task, you can probably like switch the workspace from, drawing to animating to design to program, like that kind of a idea of switch the whole interface around. So this is the layout. This is where we're basically like staging everything. We can model stuff. We can sculpt things. So sculpting is fun. And sculpt. No, got too much here. We need some vertices on you. That's why you're not working. But we'll come back to that. We can do UV type things. So we talked about UV a little bit last time. That's where we're basically like mapping textures onto faces. We can paint stuff and give it colors and materials, apply shading, we can animate, render, compositing and scripting we are not even going to come close to touching, but that's stuff that we can do as well. Like if we want to actually make movie type of situations where you're compositing like animations together and things of that nature. But we have too much going on in the scene, so let's get rid of everybody except for our lovely little cube. All right, any questions so far? I'm just kind of trying to go over the interface more or less. And here we go. So first and foremost, I guess one thing I should mention too is that we are going to do a homework on Blender as soon as your current one is done. So don't think you're getting out of this. It's worth playing with at least once, I think. And your homework is going to help you with your Unity project too. So we have our workspace. Now, we talked about viewport or viewpoints last time, right? So we talked about the different ways to look at something, whether it's perspective, whether it was parallel, or orthographic, front view, top view, side view, so on and so forth. We can do that here in Blender as well. So if I wanted to look at the top view, I can just click Z, or it's numpad 7. Here's my top view. Here's my side view. Here's my front view. And then I can just hold my middle mouse button to kind of free range the camera there. Or I can go to View, Viewpoint, and I can pick all those here as well. We can also swap between perspective and orthographic view. So here we have our orthographic perspective, and it's numpad 5. So again, numpad's kind of a helpful thing to have as well here. But what do we see? We are in orthographic right now. We see very specific hard angles here, right? So this is our isometric view. Hard angle, hard angle, hard angle. They should all match there. If we go back to perspective, we can kind of see that vanishing point like would be way out here in the distance. And again, we can kind of free range it too as we want. But helpful if you want to, go through and do this. And as a refresher on views, if you want to get a kind of a feeling for what some of the different views are that you might have seen in various games, here's our Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Nice top-down oblique view where we can very clearly see the top and the front, which is kind of nice. I've got to be honest, I don't remember what this one is. This looks like an Elder Scrolls game of some, or not, one of the Forgotten Realms games, but I don't think it is. This one kind of looks like a cyberpunk game, the Shadowrun games, maybe. I don't have I've got the link to the image, but not the actual which one is which here. But you kind of get the feeling, right? So this is isometric view, pure isometric. Here we have a perspective view. Things kind of have like a parallel feel because obviously they're perspective. But in Blender, you can set these as well. And if you want other hotkeys, here are the things as well. And these are actually slightly swapped in my version now that I look at it. The hand and the perspective versus orthographic and the camera. These are all in a different spot. But play around with the buttons, and if you hover over them, it'll tell you exactly what it is too, if there's something that you're not aware of. What else? Oh, other thing I didn't mention, this bar down here, this is for animation. So if you have an animated scene, you can do that as well. Like for instance, I could do this, and I could play it, and now our cube is on fire. Or it's at least smoking. Now it's on fire. We'll get to that in a little bit, don't worry. If you are playing along at home, the shortcut is F3 to search, which is a very helpful key, by the way, if you need to search for anything, F3. And then I just searched for smoke, and quick smoke is the thing that pops up. But if you're going to be rendering out animations, your laptop should be able to handle it, or your computer should be able to handle it. So we have that. Now let's start looking at object mode. We have multiple object modes, I guess. So we have object mode, edit mode, sculpting, painting, so either the vertices or the weights, texture painting. These are all things that we can do in Blender. So the various paints that we can do, if you do a vertex paint, you're going to color the vertex, kind of like how we colored vertices in WebGL. If you're doing weight paint, you can basically rig up, say, character models. You can add density to things. If you're doing hair, like you can change how luscious your animal's fur is or your character's hair is, things like that. When we're texture painting, we're UV mapping. So basically, you're going to have a mesh of some kind, which is just one of these shapes that you see, and you're wrapping a texture around it, and maybe drawing or coloring onto that. So next up is the pie menu, which is just a little like a hotkey type of thing. So the figure you see in the slides, if you're following along, basically you can click this drop down, go to your various modes. If you hit Control Tab, you can get to some of these modes as well. So this is the pie menu. Z will give you different shading type things. So here we have a wireframe, which we could also just click this up here. And I somehow got into painting mode. Just went object mode. So there's our wireframe. Solid, wireframe, solid. Holding Z, wireframe. Basically, there's just different ways to get to the various aspects. But wireframe helpful if you have like a whole bunch of objects. Like if I were to say add another cube in here, and let's move you up a little bit and maybe to this way and then back a bit. We can see, with a wireframe, you don't see any shading. But once I turn shading on, well, I can't see what's actually going on inside this object. Maybe I have done stuff inside, and wireframe would help me, say, pick a vertex or pick an object. So let's undo, shading. Okay, back to normal. Again, feel free to stop me. I'm just kind of running through the interface with you right now. One thing I did notice in my search tool, so let's see if this works in Google, Blender shortcuts. Oh, okay, didn't pop up in here. When I was on DuckDuckGo, Blender shortcuts, it actually gave me a nice list right here of the basic things that you need. So like here's all the Blender shortcuts in a nice, easy to digest fashion. Okay, so that's our user interface. Not expecting you to be experts. I definitely am not, and I've been playing with this since probably 2005. Unofficially, I guess. But you have a modeling tool here. You have something that you can generate models that can be exported to multiple common standardized formats that you can use anywhere, right? We have drag and drop, so we've got like a what you see is what you get. I refuse to say the word WYSIWYG. I think it's horrible. And we have ways that we can very specifically, precisely specify everything you want. Lengths, widths, depths, angles, colors, shading, lights, everything can be very, very precise, which is very handy, right? You want that in a good modeling tool. So let's start playing around with this now. And I don't actually talk about this, I think, later on, so I want to make sure that I do here. Let's say that I've got my beautiful cube, and let's add on Suzanne here. Move her up. Let's see. Go to our side view. Make sure you're just sitting on top. I know there's ways that we can like have gravity be applied and collisions and all that, but out of depth here. But let's say that I have this lovely model, right? Put my monkey on a pedestal. Probably a bad euphemism somewhere in there. I can export this, and I'm not sure how well you can see this, but here we can export to standard STL model. So this is like your standard model format for multiple types of software packages. Or we can output to GLTF, which is another common format. All right, so let's go ahead and do GLTF. Just drop it here onto the desktop, and I'm going to call you Suzanne on a pedestal. Export. All right. And now if I go over here, let's go to Babylon. I know I showed you this before, but since we're talking about Blender, it's worth talking about now. Open up my Explorer, desktop, Suzanne. There we go. Nicely, beautifully rendered in 3D in WebGL. One of the things with doing this kind of an export, though, it doesn't always carry the material properties over. So you might need to write a separate parser or export like the materials and the colors and the textures separately and load those in separately. But at least the vertex data comes through. So let's say that you want to add stuff, right? Enough blathering on about how cool Blender is and how much fun it is. Shift A. So Shift A or add is going to get you an object, right? So I can add all of these basics here. So let's give Suzanne a halo. Perfect, perfect. There, now I've got a monk. One thing I should mention though, and this is something to be careful with, when you add on an object and you add it, you see this menu pop up here, right? So this is all the basic properties of the object. Make sure that whatever you need to specify, you do before you click off of it. So if I want so like I'm changing the resolution of the torus there, you can kind of see how many segments it's got. It's like how many polygons. You can kind of see its resolution changing. Let's change its radius, change its inner radius. Some of the very particular dimensions you cannot access anymore once you click off of it. And so if I click this again and I go to its properties, well, I don't see inner radius. I don't see exterior radius anymore. And if I search for it, I don't see that either. So basically, when you start playing around with these objects, make sure that you have everything clearly specified that you need because you might need to like re-add it and delete it. And if there is a way to access this, I'm not aware of it. One of those things. But one of the YouTube videos that I've follow for tutorials on Blender, they very specifically said, make sure you update this because it's gone forever once you click off of it. It's kind of one of those like user interface niceties to worry about. But we have some objects here. Everybody good so far? Any questions? Yep. Awesome. Okay, so like I could export this scene now, and now I've got 3 meshes that are just in my scene. And if I render this out, I think my camera's probably off. Let's let's add a new camera. Can we add a new camera easy? Camera. Let's get rid of this one. What do you, whoa, let's, let's not do that. All right, where's my camera at? Move you, rotate you. How are we looking now? Not as bad. So other things that we see here too, based on our light source, right? We see very specific properties happening with shading. So like there's actually a shadow here being cast by our scene. And this kind of looks like a lonely Roman statue type of thing going on, like a marble bust sitting in the corner. But kind of neat that this is automatically taken care of for us. And with the light, let's say that that's too dim. Let's move our light source and move you over here. Let's go up a bit, render. Now that's where the light is. Pretty bright, huh? I can even brighten it further. So let's go down. So here we have a special property for the light. Let's change the intensity to 5,000 watts. And let's render. Even more. Let's change the color of our light source to, let's go a nice teal. Pleasing internet color. Render, F12, I should remember that. Oh, now we have the properties of a blue teal light being cast on a basic surface. Right, so effectively, all of these things that I'm playing with here, let's move you back a bit, go back to white. White's gonna be, let's just do this the old-fashioned way, since I'm not gonna pick it properly. There we go, back to basics. So that's a point light. I mean, I could make this a sun or a spotlight. And if I do a spotlight, we get different properties, right? So we see Suzanne and our stuff is kind of shaded here. Why is that? Well, our spotlight is a different thing. It's a cone of light radiating out from the source. Let's rotate you now so that you're actually pointing on our scene. Move it up a bit and back this way. And I'm just kind of free playing here. I don't like have this in mind to talk about. And now we have a little bit more of a scene, right? If I moved it directly overhead and I just pointed it down, in theory, everything would be kind of elevated or shown, I suppose. So just, it's one of those things where it's fun to play with and like try to make a scene or model something that's kind of fun. Like here we've got our little shrine to Suzanne. It's the name of the monkey, by the way. That's not any particular reason. So we have our objects. We have our various primitives that we can add. These all come pre-built. We can transform them. You have seen this already. So translate, rotate, scale are basic transforms that we know from WebGL, except you don't have to worry about that awful matrix math here. And we can set various precisions based on coordinates or axes, things of that nature too. So when we are in object mode, and that's the mode that I've really been in mostly here, your things that you're modeling, your primitives, these are just an entity. So all the matrices are moving along here, right? When I take Suzanne and I shift her around, every single vertex on her head is moving with it. But when I go to edit mode, we see all the vertices. So I can deform each and every one of them. Right, let's not do extrude. Let's just select. And this is kind of one of the interesting things too. I don't have this in the slide, but based on the vertices you see, if you like drag and, select a box, so I'm just kind of doing a drag and select here. If I rotate around to the back, none of these vertices are selected. Now you can select all of them. I don't exactly remember what the hotkey is for that, but what I typically do is just kind of rotate around until I get everything I need. I know there's a hotkey to do it, I just don't remember what it is offhand. And I'm shift selecting now to like try and get everything. I mean, I could just, I guess, click on the object. That works too. Select. Yeah, good enough. But Kind of the point is that we can play with these vertices as we want. And if I move one vertex, we see the surrounding polygons move with it, so we can make her a nice little cone head. Make a crystal skull out of our Suzanne here, I suppose. Oops. On deselect, I want these three vertices. Pull up. So we got Suzanne with a mohawk. It's kind of fun. Again, it's kind of fun to play with this. I think somebody was asking me on day one, like, do we actually mess with every single vertex by hand? In a tool like this, absolutely not. You don't want to have to do all this math, and they do it for us. So I have been in vertex picking mode too, by the way. So I can just select a single vertex here, right? And kind of play around with it. So if I pick this one, I can yank it over this way. Again, I'm just in move mode. I could rotate this thing. Oops. Sorry, let's rotate more than one vertex here. You can kind of see the shape rotating. I can scale, which kind of does similar things. We're just scaling points. But I'm going vertex by vertex. I can also select edges by clicking this little box up here. So right now we're in vertex mode, kind of hard to see. This is edge mode where I can pick an edge. So it's going to pick basically connecting lines here. And if I were to say translate this one this way, now we've got this going on, right? And the nice thing is all the other vertices come to play as well because they're all connected as a single mesh. I can also select a face. So this is face mode. Pick a face. I can move this as well. You can kind of hopefully see like how you start building up scenes and objects where it can start from a cube. You just start deforming it and adding surfaces. Let's get rid of our awful scene here. Let's get rid of Suzanne and our torus. Go back to a cube. So anything else I wanted to talk about here? I'll talk about subdividing when we get to sculpting. But play with vertices or edges or faces just kind of depends on what you want to do. So let's go to edit mode. So we got to click our cube, go over to edit mode. Let's say that I want to extrude this. So I don't want a cube, I want a rectangular prism. All right, well, I'll click extrude, which means that whatever face I'm picking here, I will go along that axis. Now it's a rectangle, right? Click this face. Now it's a border wall, for instance. And maybe I want to, let's go further here. Let's select this cube, copy and paste it. Now I want to duplicate you. Can't duplicate. Oh, object mode. I'm silly. Okay, copy and paste. Move you this way. Now I've got two of them, and I could add one here, and hey, I've got a beautiful border for my my top-down 2D game. And if we're importing this into something like Unity, we could say this has a collider, character can't walk into it. What is it for us in Unity world? Well, it's just a mesh that has a collider attached to it. But let's go back to where we were before. Extruding, helpful if you have like, you want to build up a shape from something here. One other thing I can do here too is I can, let's see, mesh. I think we have to be in, we are in edit mode. Vertex mode. Where is my subdivide? So this is where things start going wrong for me here. Mesh. Where is subdivide? There it is. Okay. Edge. Subdivide. So what I was kind of doing there is that let's select everything here. Select all of our faces. Face. Face. Bottom face. All right, so we have our cube here. If I go edge Subdivide, I've given it more resolution, right? I've split it in half. You can kind of see these extra vertices have appeared. And if I subdivide again, now we have more and more. And what I can do now is I can go into vertex mode and just grab this one tiny little vertex and just deform that. Whereas before, when I had one subdivision, let's pick this vertex here, it's updating the whole face because that's all it knows how to work with. One of the things when you start playing with a modeling tool like this is that based on how many vertices you're working with, that will deform the rest of the shape. Right? If we subdivide this top again, go one more time. Oops, I clicked the wrong thing. Subdivide, pick this edge. We have more information. The shape has more to do here, right? And I've got a nice little well for like a Marble Madness type ball to fall into. So that's extruding. We can create new faces as well too. So let's do this. So I'm gonna pick. Let's go to edge mode. I'm gonna pick this edge, 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 and this edge. I'm gonna hit F, and now I have a face again. If I go to wireframe mode, well, I see that my kind of underside is still there, right? Here's all the vertices. But by filling, I basically said, here's two edges, add a new face to it. Let's go back to shaded mode because I like this figure. Okay, so we have extruding, we have filling, and now we can start texturing. About, what, half hour left, 20 minutes left here. Again, if you have time to play with this, I have so much fun playing with Blender, and I am not an artist. I make no claims that I am, but to me this is it's fun to play with. If anything, but to like learn how to do stuff like this. So let's paint our monkey. So I'm not going to actually be applying a texture map here, but I'm going to show you how we can break our model apart so that you could apply one. And just as kind of a reminder, we talked about this when we went over the other libraries and mapping things onto models. So this thing that you see here, so this would be the model that we're creating, right? So if I let's add on this circle. No, I don't want a circle. I want to go to object mode. I want to add a sphere. There we go. So here's my sphere. Beautiful sphere. We have a whole bunch of polygons here, right? And when we transpose it into a different coordinate system, we end up with a UV map where it kind of looks, something like this. And we have basically a projection that's occurring here to make this go to this. Well, if we have a UV model, we are basically taking that model, mapping it onto this surface, and then wrapping it around our shape. And this is something that we can get in Blender. We can very easily see the flattened image, and you can even pick which vertices you want to be incorporated. One thing I forgot to show you with the objects here. So we see this object, right? And what I want to do is maybe I don't like this old school polygonal look. I can pick object, and I'm in object mode here. Object, shade smooth. Now, it's just like a flat, kind of a matte surface type of thing going on here. If I go ahead and render this, that's not going to be able to see it because it's not in scene. So I moved it. Let's put you right there. Perfect. Beautiful. Nice, smooth sphere. Whereas if I change it back to shade flat, get our polygons back, render again, now it's polygonal. Basically, shade smooth just kind of tries to smooth the corners and the hard edges for you. Um, so object, and we can play with that if you want to. Oh, while we're pulling up some information, let's set this on fire just because it's fun. Fun for me. Actually, no, let's not set it on fire. Let's do quick explode. Let's hit play. Whee! Again. Whee! Hmm. Fun. One other thing we should mention too, these little quick, I have too much fun with this sometimes. We can make it furry. Let's go medium density. Let's give it 0.5, view percent, 30, 40. Now, our nice sphere, it's a bit hairy. This might take a moment to render. Oh, there we go. Gorgeous. This looks like a COVID cell. All right, de-hair yourself. Okay, so we have UV mapping. And again, this is kind of what you would be doing if you want to apply like a texture to an image. You've probably have seen things like this when you've looked into, if any of you ever looked into any way to render out the animation. Why, yes, there is. So let's go back to, let's do explode. Sphere already has a particle system. Oops, I didn't undo too far. Okay. Quick explode. Amount of pieces, 100, good enough. Okay, so where do we stop? Here, that's good enough. Say 35. So this thing on the bottom here is your time frame. If you know anything about animation and keyframing and keying and all that stuff, I'm not going to go into that, but basically start and end. You can say how long it will run. So I'm going to say to 35. You can hit render animation. And I think it saves it as a list of images, if I recall. But yeah, you can save that out. Yeah, no, that's why I said Blender is super cool. I've seen some really neat things people have done with like animating GIFs on Reddit, at least bringing Blender into it. But if we open this, I didn't save it, so I'm not sure where the output is, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to be in there, but pretty sure it just saves it as a series of like PNGs. But let's get rid of our animation there. Okay, so we have UV, applying textures. What we can do in Blender is that we can UV map our meshes, which is very powerful if you want to start like painting things or applying these textures. Right, so if you, let's say that you've modeled a velociraptor here, I think that's a velociraptor, or you've modeled a human or the monkey, right? So we'll probably bring the monkey back into it actually. So let's, while I'm talking, let me get rid of these guys. So let's add Suzanne back in. Suzanne, let's get our monkey. Monkey. Okay, perfect. So this is a series of vertices, right? And edges. When we UV map them, Blender will actually break down what you've selected and turn it into a UV map. You could then, say, export that and draw whatever you want to be applied to it, or you could just paint it directly, which is what I'm going to do. So let's go to UV editing. And we actually see here, it automatically did it for us based on what was selected. Right, so all the vertices are selected. Here is the UV map. And you can kind of play around with this to get a feel for how, like what each edge is and what each vertex is. Like if I selected these guys here, let's deselect. Oops, no, I want everything selected. Didn't want to do that. But let's say that I just want to select her eye here. Okay. So this is one eyeball. Okay, well that's right here. If I want to select her whole face, I could just kind of, let's do this and see if I can get this to work. That didn't turn out too bad. So basically here's the face, here's the eyes. This is probably parts of the ears here. And it's automatically generating the map for us. So this is UV editing at its finest. Let's go back to our layout. So let's select Suzanne, UV editing. And I want to go edit. Where's my edits? UV Unwrap. This is where things start to break down for me because I just tried clicking things and I was shouldn't have been clicking things. Selecting everything. What have I missed? The easy way to select. That's what I missed. Okay, so I can go UV, unwrap, and then I get a slightly different picture, not matching this one nicely. And something that I'm not really going to be doing in here, but if you wanted to like really lay out this model, so let's Smart UV? No. Select. Why are you not selecting, Suzanne? Object mode. Edit mode. Object mode. Come on, select. Grr. Why are you not selecting? Okay, let's go back. This is where my unfamiliarity with Blender is coming back to bite me in the ass here. So, new Suzanne. UV paint. Okay, got everything selected. Good. What we can do here is that I can say like select edges on this particular scene, and I can basically lay out like where the seams of a UV texture would be. And this was me kind of dinking around trying to talk about what's in here. And I want to mark this as a seam. Oh, good, I selected the eye. What I'm doing, other than clicking around and cursing on camera, is I'm marking out like the very specific areas that a UV texture would be applied to an image. Right, so this is like everything around here. This would be the iris, for instance, or the eyeball, inside of here is probably the iris. And based on me marking this as a seam, we can see, unfortunately I picked the right thing, that here is a seam in our model. Right, and that would basically be kind of how the texture is going to be wrapped onto this thing. And you can get textures off the internet too, right? Don't necessarily have to make them yourself. But something worth playing with that I'm not going to have time for today. One of the other things we can do too, if we want to, get a little bit frisky here, is we can paint this model. So here we have Suzanne, right? Nice little default view. And I can say paint her a little bit. And this is where you're actually going to need a material to work with. So by default, there's no material. You just get this kind of default hot pink, the magic color. If I add a material, let's just add a base color. And that's fine. Let's go tealish. Okay, well, here's my materials base color now. All right, so this thing has what we're going to see in a few minutes is a node that's been applied to it. All right, so I can see our nice color. I can also draw onto this, which is kind of fun too. And you have like a brush that you can apply. So let's go back to hot pink. No, let's do green. All right, and you see let's make our radius a little bit smaller here. Let's color her eye. This is kind of coming on like an aerosol, like a spray paint type of thing. just because I'm being lazy and not being very, good with this. Let's go do a nice little Joker face. You can kind of see it's painted just what is visible. It didn't paint underneath. So almost pretend this is like a spray paint kind of thing going on here. Let's make me pretty. Now I am beautiful. Perfect. Just what you want in a nice monkey face. Okay. Well, if I were to render this now, we actually see that the color and the texture has come through. Again, you don't necessarily have to freehand this. If you had a UV map over here on the left, that's what this would be here. You could actually work on each separate surface very, very finely. So we have that. If you want to save this texture to be used again later, you can do UV edit, save as image. We can pack it in to basically save it off as a .blend file, which means that we can work on it again later in Blender. Let's go ahead and do that just in case. So UV editing, image, save as image. Oops, image, save as image. Good enough. Save, 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 save. Untitled, the best type. Image, save. Okay. Interestingly, now that I've gone back and forth between tabs, my texture map on the side here actually renders out what I did graphically. So I could say export this thing here on the left, and this is now a UV texture that I can apply to a monkey in the future. But the last thing I'm going to kind of play around with here is we are going to look at the node editor. So this is really where the power comes in. So this is in shading now. And you might notice the progression. We're just kind of going across the tabs here. Shading is where we can actually make our scene kind of come to life, which is pretty cool. At least I think it's pretty cool. So here we have our beautiful monkey. Hi, monkey. This thing here in the bottom is the node editor. And if you have experience with, say, Unity's shader graphs, this is probably going to look pretty familiar. It's a similar idea. Basically, we have a bunch of nodes. And I think I can zoom in on this. Yep, good. We have input nodes, we have modification nodes, we have output nodes, a whole list of parameters that we can mess with to change this scene. So based on what I did before, and you can also drag and drop in, it's like it nicely snaps. Typically, the easy way to read this is match colors between nodes. So if I want to like define a color or a material, well, the output is this color. The input somewhere else is going to be the same yellow, yellow node. So I could also move this to subsurface color. We see our scene change, but things are a little bit different under the hood, or it's the outer layer. This is what you get by default with what I showed you. We're going to play around with this to change our scene a bit. So let's do that. And you can play with these parameters too and get like a live update. And change the specularity. It should be updating a little bit. Make it a little more metallic. Take the metallic away. Add a clear coat. Undo. Hopefully it looks a little bit different on the render. But you can just basically play with these texture properties, which is fun. So what I've got here, I'm going to actually move this off screen because I want to work with it and Blender at the same time, is I'm going to get rid of this BSDF node here. Again, the material that you see, this is what you defined before in texture paint. So when we said add material, that's what popped up there. I'm actually going to add a metallic color as well, just to kind of play along with the slides. Shading, so now we also see this extra node here. And it's going to match up with what you see slide-wise too. So I'm going to, let's see, we've got this here, we've got this here. I need a diffuser, so I'm going to go add. I'm just going to search for diffuse BSDF. Pop you here. Gonna add a glossy BSDF, and I need a mix shader. Oops, that is not what I wanted. Add mix. And one kind of highlight here is if you want to start like mixing properties together, you can add these like property changers types of nodes, and you need to mix them together in, it's basically like a multiplexer kind of thing. And you can say how much of one versus the other will provide an input. And based on what I've got here, so this top one, I want it fully rough. Its color is coming from our base material. Our glossy's color is coming from the metallic. That roughness is fine by default. We're mixing them, equal distribution, and now we link that up to our output. And now we have something that looks pretty similar, but now it's got a little bit of a metallic sheen to it. And if I were to render this out, I should really move that camera. Let's move that camera before we get too frisky here. Because I just have basically one other thing that I want to do, and then we'll call it for the day. So let's move this camera. Move you for here, this way, down, rotate. What does our camera see? I rotate you still. Camera. Can't rotate in this view. Damn. Oh, that's why. Okay. Is that gonna work now? No, it's even worse. It's even worse. This one a nice picture of our scene. Oh, zoomed out monkey head's good enough, right? Without too much mucking about here. That's good enough. That's as good as it's gonna get today. All right, back to shading. All right, so what we are going to do now is we're going to make a cute little cartoon monkey head. So we're going to make it a plastic toy looking type of thing. And this is where I will sometimes struggle because, yeah, this is where I can screw this up. So what I want to do is I'm going to add a plane to the scene, and the plane is basically going to give the light something to bounce off of. So let's move the plane down a bit. Let's look at it from the side. So the plane's right there. Scale our plane in the X and Y directions. Now we have a surface to sit on. If I render again, oh, pretty, ooh. It's an art installation now. All right, go back to shading. The nodes that I need are these guys. So we're going to add in our texture. We have a diffuse, a glossy, and we're going to play around with these features a little bit. And just depending on how I've kind of dinked around with this, this may or may not work. All right, so we just want our image. We don't need this metallic anymore. Diffuse and glossy we're going to keep. Glossy is not getting an input. This has a roughness of 0. This has a roughness of 0.1. I should mention this particular set of nodes I got off, I think it was a tutorial about a year ago for how to make like a cute plastic looking toy in Blender. We also need a layer weight. Pop you here. Blend, that's fine. Okay, so we have our mixed shader. Fresnel goes into here. And that's our output. And if we render this, it doesn't look very plasticky, but we should probably shade the smooth. Now let's render you again. There we go. Look at that. Cute plastic toy to frighten all your favorite children in your life. Alrighty. Yeah, kind of works. I like it. Beautiful. And let's see. So we've got that. And what we will end on here is let's set our little monkey on fire. So, or we can make her explode. And then she explode. That's her. That's not what we wanted. We want Suzanne to explode. Perfect. You go below the plane at that point. So let's say 25. Let's render. Let's render at scene 1. So that's good. Render animation. View animation? That's the wrong animation. Render animation. This is awakening something in me. Beautiful. Okay, 25 frames. Can I save you off? Save as. Desktop. Oh, this is just the image though. That's just the image. How do I get the animation? I'll have to find it in here. I know it's somewhere where you can extract each image. Render animation. View animation. There we go. Oh, it's just, okay, so it's saving it off in the TMP directory. What we could do, I could show you some trickery here. Can you do collision in Blender as well? Yes, you can. You can do simulations in Blender. So we are in temp. Let me show you some trickery here. Let's go to CD, mount C temp ls. Awesome. There's only 25 frames. I have hidden knowledge. Suzanne explode. FPS 10. Gifkitsky, and spell that right. I think this has more frames than I need, so Suzanne's going to do some strange things. Okay. I could have just opened that up. All right, well, we're going to get multiple explosions happening here. You done yet? Oh, I made you a PNG, but it's a GIF. Yes. And whee! There we go. Basically, all I did was here, let's do this properly. Let's make this 20 frames per second. Glad I didn't delete them. I made a PNG again. One other thing I should mention too before we end for today. So I wanted to show you this. Let me do a new. Yeah, we'll do new. So I mentioned last time the website Thingiverse. So Thingiverse, this is where you can get lots of models for like 3D printing, all kinds of cool stuff if you want to be a maker. But I went ahead and I just downloaded a random model, import, STL, because I know it's an STL. It's a dragon. I did nothing other than download somebody's model. Hey, here's all the vertices that this dragon needs. And this is done. You're a GIF. Pew, pew. I'm satisfied with that. I'm not quite satisfied. Yeah, I'm satisfied. It's actually not a bad explosion, especially in this kind of glass-looking object. So, any questions from today at all? What we will do next time, if we are all good, is we'll wrap up Blender because I'm going to work you through building a donut a little bit, just a little bit, and then we'll go right into Unity. So um, check out Unity and Blender, get them up and running on your computers because you will need them, and they work on any machine, so Windows, Linux, Mac, they work on all of those. But that's what we'll be getting into next time. And oh, and yeah, sorry, one more thing. No class Thursday. Don't forget, that's our break day. So make sure that you get some good rest and respite in because that's all we get for a break. All right. Have a great weekend. I will see you all next week, Tuesday. Unless you drop by office hours, which please feel free to do that if you need help. But other than that, that's all I got for you. Bye, everybody. Stop presenting. End it here. Close. Thanks. Oh, let's do this. Let's add some sweet hair to this dragon. See what happens. Quick hair. Quick fur. Okay, we got some fur. The boots with the fur. What happens when we render this? Ugh. Camera, you're killing me here. Wow, that is a big dragon. Also, our light being tiny doesn't help as well. Render again. Ugh, not useful. Okay, what's our camera looking at? Oh, okay. Let's rotate our camera then. Yeah. Camera, where are you? I'm just messing around. You guys don't have to hang around if you're done for the day. All right, rotate this way, please. No light, huh? Oh, okay, you're too far away. It's very easy to get lost in 3D space. Okay, that should be better. Now let's see what's going on. It's like an adolescent dragon trying to grow a mustache. Make it a little bit longer now. Yeah, those properties are probably gone forever now. Oh, there it is. 1 meter. Meter long hair. Beautiful. All right, I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.